there is a moment the narcissist never sees coming. No drama, no tears, no accusations, just silence. Silence so profound it echoes in their mind like a death knell. It's the moment you stop reacting, stop hurting, stop clinging, and they realize they've truly lost you. Not just a partner, but their source of control, their supply, and the mirror that once reflected their false self back to them. In today's video, we'll uncover the emotional layers and silent collapse the narcissist goes through when they realize they no longer control you, and why your calm detachment becomes the one thing they can never forget. Make sure to subscribe and stay until the end of the video, because you'll gain deeper insight into the manipulator's psyche and, most importantly, learn how to reclaim your inner power, heal, and move forward with strength and freedom. You know, what truly breaks a narcissist isn't a dramatic breakup. It's not the yelling, the tears, or the blame. It's when you stop caring, when you stop explaining, stop defending yourself, stop trying to prove you're worthy of love. And most of all, when you go silent. For a normal person, silence might just be a pause, but for a narcissist, it's collapse, because they feed off your reactions, anger, sadness, confusion. They're all supply that keeps their sense of worth alive. But when you no longer respond, you're cutting off that energy flow, and that sends them into panic. They used to think you were weak for staying, but they were wrong. You stayed because you had a heart. You were patient, you trusted, you hoped they would change. But now, as you walk away with a clear mind and a heart no longer bound, you reveal a strength they can't control, the strength of inner freedom. And then the most devastating thing happens to the narcissist. They realize you no longer need them to feel whole. You no longer seek validation from them. You're no longer waiting for an apology, an explanation, or a late admission of guilt. You've stepped off the stage where they once directed the play, and now you're the one writing the script of your own life. That silence, for them, is the final bell. They can't handle your disappearance without a reaction. Because to a narcissist, nothing is more terrifying than being seen as irrelevant. They don't know how to exist in silence. They don't know how to live without someone looking at them with fear, admiration, or even contempt. They need reflection, and you were once the mirror, reflecting the image they created. But now, that mirror has shattered, and they're forced to face the truth. There's no one left to manipulate, no one left to hurt and reel back in. There's only them. And the emptiness your absence has left behind. They didn't love you, they loved the way they felt when they were with you. That's a brutal truth that takes time to accept. A narcissist doesn't love your true self. They love the admiration in your eyes, the way you forgave, the way you always returned, the wounds you bore just to keep the relationship going. In their eyes, you were never a person. You were a tool that made them feel powerful. And when you stop reflecting that power, everything starts to crumble. You begin to see the truth, not in their words, but in the silence between them. You see the falseness behind their compliments. You feel the manipulation behind their so-called worry, their concern. You realize that real love never demands you to trade yourself for acceptance. And so you quietly step back, not because you hate them, but because you've started to love yourself. The moment you stop explaining is the moment they begin to fear. To a narcissist, your silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's a rejection of their power. When you no longer try to explain why you're hurt, no longer feel the need to prove your innocence, no longer respond with anger or disappointment, they know you've stepped outside the cycle they created. You're no longer playing their game. And to them, that is more terrifying than betrayal, is the awakening of their victim. You don't need to announce that you've changed. They feel it in your eyes, in your breath, in your calm. They try their old tactics: silence, rage, playing the victim, pretending they've changed. But this time, you don't react. You don't rush to fix what they deliberately broke. You don't try to save what they never wanted to keep. And that's when they know they've lost their power. You begin to live without needing to prove anything to anyone. Life after the narcissist isn't easy. There are nights you wonder if you were too harsh or leaving. Moments when memories resurface and you miss not them, but the version of yourself who once loved them. But then you realize you deserve peace. You deserve a life not conditioned by control, manipulation, and constant insecurity. Narcissists cannot bear to be invisible. They need a reaction. They need to be loved, hated, blamed, anything, as long as they feel important. But when you become indifferent, when their existence no longer sways your emotions, when you no longer seek their validation, that's when they confront the greatest void inside themselves. There's no one left to define them, and that makes them feel worthless. They may pretend they've moved on, But everything they do is a desperate attempt to regain your attention. They'll post happy pictures with someone new. They'll boast about their success. They might act like you never existed. But if you look closely, you'll see that what they fear most is your silence continuing. They check your social media. They ask mutual friends about you. They try every possible way to find out if you're still thinking of them, because they've never truly gotten over you. You're not seeking revenge. You're simply refusing to give them the privilege to hurt you again. You don't go back. You don't reply. You don't need closure. And to them, that is the complete collapse of the illusion they built. A narcissist doesn't grieve the loss of love. They grieve the loss of control. They grieve the loss of someone willing to play a supporting role in a script where they were always the star. You're no longer the mirror. You shadowed it and walked away. And the most painful part, you saw who they truly were and still chose to leave. You saw the weakness behind their arrogance. You saw the fear of abandonment hidden beneath their controlling behavior. You understood why they are the way they are. And still, you let go, not because you didn't care, but because you could no longer be a co-conspirator in your own suffering. To a narcissist, this is the ultimate betrayal, your growth. You're no longer trapped in their psychological maze. You no longer let them paint the world you live in. You rewrote the script, and in this new story, they no longer have a role. Your freedom is a declaration. I don't need you to be whole. And that is something they will never forgive. You don't have to shout that you're strong. You just live in peace. And let that peace speak for you. The narcissist may try to craft a new narrative, may try to erase you by replacing you, but you are the period at the end of their manipulation. They may find someone new, but they will never find you again. The one who once loved them with the full heart and then had the courage to walk away with that same heart still intact. They'll call you cold, but the truth is, you once burned so brightly for them, you nearly turned to ash. They don't know, or they choose to forget, how much you sacrificed, how many times you forgave repeated wounds, how long you waited for a change you knew deep down would never come, how many sleepless nights, suspicious glances, and disguised criticisms you endured, packaged as love. And when you could burn no longer, you chose to save the last flame for yourself. You didn't become cruel, you simply learned how to love yourself properly. A narcissist will never understand why you left in silence, because they don't understand that some people, when hurt to their core, don't scream, they retreat. Not because they've stopped feeling, but because they've stopped investing emotions into a place that only brings pain. That retreat, it's an act of quiet courage. You were once drowning in guilt, but now you've surfaced as someone who knows how to breathe under pressure. The narcissist made you feel like everything bad that happened was your fault. They made you question your intuition, your memory, even your worth. But now, having escaped that vicious cycle, you begin to rebuild piece by piece your trust, your self-respect, your ability to love yourself. And in that process, you no longer need them to confirm whether or not you are worthy. They've always lived by a script, and you were the first to refuse your role. As to them, every relationship is a stage. They are the character, the charming one, the intelligent one, the victim, the misunderstood genius, depending on the role they choose. And you? You were supposed to be the rescuer, the sufferer, the manipulated one, the one who pleads. But one day you paused in the middle of their performance, looked them straight in the eyes and said, I'm not acting anymore. And from that moment on, they lost control of the plot. You're no longer the person they used to know, and that terrifies them. They believed you would always be there, always forgiving, always returning, always loving, without needing to be loved back. But now they see you smiling without them. They see you living, growing, being loved in the right way by others or by yourself. And that threatens them, not because they love you, but because they're no longer the center of your universe. When you let go, they lost more than just a relationship. They lost the illusion of who they believed they were. You were once the mirror that reflected the idealized version of themselves they wanted to believe in. Used to hide their shadows, excuse their wrongs, and repaint the image they wished to project. But when you stopped doing that, the mirror shattered, and they were forced to see the parts they had always tried to avoid. The emptiness, the flaws, the emotional void. You weren't trying to break them. You simply stopped helping them maintain the illusion. They may replace a lover, but they can never replace you, because what you gave wasn't something that can be copied. It was sincerity, patience, and the courage to love someone who was broken, even when you were the one who got hurt the most. The one who comes after may bring a new face, may say the same words you once said, may reenact old scripts, but they'll never see the light that once shone in your eyes when you still believed in them. And that will haunt them for a long time. You didn't leave because you hated them. You left because you finally began to love yourself. A narcissist doesn't understand that. To them, your departure is always an insult. They believe you were supposed to stay forever, despite the hurt, despite the pain, because to them, that was your duty as someone who loved them. But you weren't born to carry the weight of someone else's damage. You were born to be loved fully, healthily, and freely. In the end, they will come to realize that the only thing you ever truly needed was to be seen, to be understood, to be loved the right way. And they lost that chance. You don't look back. You don't hope they understand. You don't need an apology. You don't need an explanation. Because now you've stepped into a new chapter where you continue writing your story, no longer carrying the shadow of someone who once made you forget your own worth. And then when every manipulation tactic dissolves into the silence you left behind, when every control game fails to work on a soul that has awakened, the narcissist finally comes to a realization. They didn't just lose a person, they lost the only source of control that made them feel like they existed. You were once the light that illuminated their darkest corners, but they didn't cherish it. They tried to turn you into a mirror, reflecting the illusion of perfection they created. But you weren't born to reflect someone else. You were born to shine in your own way. When you walked away, quietly, without anger, without waiting for an apology, you didn't leave an empty space. You left behind a silence powerful enough to awaken. It wasn't the silence of pain, but the silence of a soul that had matured. One that chose peace over chaos, truth over illusion. The narcissist may continue performing their show. They may find a new supply, paint pictures of happiness on social media, smile for the crowds. But in the moments when they're alone with themselves, they know they lost the one who saw them most clearly, trusted them most deeply, and ultimately was the one who stayed the longest, only to be the one who finally walked away. They will never forget your silence. They will never forget the look in your eyes, no longer pleading. They will never forget the moment you left, not to prove a point, but to protect what remained intact inside you. And you remember, the one watching this video, remember, you don't need revenge. You don't need them to understand. You don't need validation from someone who never truly saw who you are. You only need to keep walking forward and let your peace speak for you. If what you just heard made you feel seen, understood, and empowered, hit that subscribe button now. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss another video, because you deserve the knowledge, the healing, and the strength to overcome any wound inflicted by those who once tried to make you forget your worth. Thank you for being here where awakening begins and true freedom welcomes you.